Hello and welcome to a new video in the course of Python programming language. In the previous two videos we talked about primary data types, we talked about integers, we talked about floats, strings, booleans, and lists. In this video we will talk about if statements. If statements are important, and most likely you will end up using them in almost every program. An if statement is to tell the program whether to run a piece of your code or not to run it. This will depend on the condition that you will include in the if statement. For this lesson, I will use Spyder, one of the products that came with Anaconda. So go ahead and start a Spyder program in your computer so you can follow along with my presentation. Alright, here's Spyder. I opened it. Your view could be looking a little bit different. This is the editor where you're going to type the code. And here's the console, the IPython console. We can run command by command. I explained this in the past. And it shows also the output of your code when you run the code. If your screen looks a little bit different than mine and you wish to kind of copy my screen, you can go to View, Panes, and only select the editor and the IPython console. Most likely you have some other panes that are selected, so you can deselect these if you wish to keep it as just two panes. Alright, our lesson today is about if statements. So we'll start by defining a new variable, x equals 0. And we'd like to create an if statement. Let's say if x is greater than 0, then we have a colon. This is how we write the if statement. And then we hit enter. You will notice there's an indentation here automatically. Depending on the distribution you're using, if there's none here, you may want to make sure to create an indentation right here. This is usually 4 spaces. It doesn't have to be, as long as you stick to the same indentation throughout your block of code. You can go with less or more spaces. I see most people using 4 spaces. It's kind of nice to stick with that to match what the common practice in the Python community. So now if this condition is true, we would like to run, say, a print command here. So we'd like to print x is a positive number. So let's see what happens if we run this code. We didn't get any output right here because obviously x is not greater than 0. So what if we replace x by 5 and then run the code? It's going to print x is a positive number. Let's clear the screen here and run one more time. X is a positive number, as you can see. Alright, so this does not include an else statement. What if we want to include an else statement? So else, enter, and then let's say print x is not a positive number. X is equal to 5, so I guess it's going to, the statement here is true. It's going to print this and it's going to skip the else statement. If we set x to be -3, run the code, it's going to say x is not a positive number. So if x is greater than 0, false, it's going to go to the else statement. What if we want to include another conditional statement here? Let's say you want to say else f, so that's the elif command. Else f x is less than 0, we want to print x as a negative number. Here it is, print x as a negative number. So the program will read this here. If the statement is true, it's going to print and then in the block. If it's not true, it's going to go to the next else if statement. It's going to print. If it's false, it's going to go to the else statement. As soon as it hits one true statement, it's going to skip the rest. So here's we run the command x equals -3 and we see the output as x is a negative number. So obviously we want to adjust this one here. So if x is less than 0, it's negative. The other option that we did not consider is 0. So else, that would be x is equal to 0. So let's adjust that. Remove this here and put equal 0. So there it is. Run the program. Again, it's a negative number, so it's going to print that. If we set x equal to 0, it's going to print x is equal to 0. What if, say, you want to print, if x is less than 0, you want to print another statement. Let's say you want to print if x is less than threshold, say, of -10, you want to include that. Let's say if x is -13, you want also the program to print not only it's negative, but also it's less than -10. So if you put the elif here, the else here, x less than 10, we would like to be able to print, let's say, x is less than -10. We would like to be able to print, let's say, x is less than -10. Print. So here's what we have so far. So what do you think if we, let me clear the screen from here. If we run the code, we will have x is a negative number. Notice it did not print x is not less than -10, even though it's -13. As I said before, it's going to hit this true statement. It's going to execute this command here and then go to the end of the if statement. It's not going to run or go over the other two statements because it's true over here. One way around this to fix this here, so I'm going to select this here, hit tab. So I'm going to include this within this block of code here. and kind of starting a new nested if statement. So a nested if statement here, if x is less than -10, print x is less than -10. So this way I'm including this within, so if x is less than 0, if it's true, it's going to run this and continue in this part of the code. So run the code here, and we can see x is a negative number, x is less than -10. Both statements were executed. Nested if statements are important, and it's kind of nice to try in your own various conditions and see what you get. Alright, here's another example. I would like to think of, say, a given number, x equals some number, non-negative number, and we'd like to the program to execute the statement and give us a printout of whether this is going to be an even number or an odd number. Let's first clear out everything here in the screen, and Control L right here. So let's say x equals 17, and we'd like to create an if statement or a block of code that will execute and again give us whether the number is odd or even. I would like for you to pause at this point and kind of work it out and come back in to look at the answer. Here's a hint for you though. As you probably would guess, the remainder of dividing by 2 is important. So how do we find this in Python? How do you find the remainder of dividing two positive integers? We use the mod command a mod b. In math, in Python, we use the percent sign. So 5 and then percent sign 2. That would give you the remainder of the division. So this might help. Alright, I hope you took a few minutes to work on the code. So let's do it together right now. So we're going to add an if statement here. If x mod 2 is equal to 0, remember the double sign, we talked about it when we covered Booleans, then we'd like to print it's an even number. Else, we'd like to print it's an odd number, so print. Alright, now let's run the code. Obviously x is 17, is an odd number. What about, let's say 12, and it prints x is an even number. Alright, here's another way to think of a conditional statement. Clear all this. Alright, let's define a list. Let's say A equals a list of 5 elements. And let's define the variable B, some other number. Let's say B equals 13. And let's say you want to test if B is an element of A. And let's say you want to do let's say print statement. So here it is. Let's say if B in A, we want to print B. Let's go ahead and run the code, and you will notice it didn't print anything because B is not an A. What if we have B equals 3? Run the code, it will print the element B. We can try if B not an A, right here, not an A, and see what we get here. Didn't print anything. What if we put 30, run the block, and it will print 30. So if B is not an A, now we'll say 30 is not an A, it printed this element B. Here's one last thing you might come across in the internet as you search for help in Python. Not that I'm recommending it, but it's just something that you might see. If we remove all this here, we say if A, print A is not empty, and now let's run the code. It prints A is not empty. So here's how Python interprets this. Any object in Python, let's say a list, if a list is empty, that's treated as false. If it's an integer, 0 means false. If it's a string, if it's empty, it means false. Otherwise, it's treated as true. Now here, A is a list that's not empty. So if A, it's treated as a true statement, and therefore it executed the statement here. If A was an empty set here, this will be treated as false right here, and as you can see here, it will not print A is not empty. Again, I'm not going to recommend that. I don't personally use this. I usually more precise. If you want to write a statement like that to test if A is empty or not empty, you can explicitly do that using the len command. If the length of A is 0, then it's empty, so then you can do whatever you want, rather than doing like that. I just wanted to mention it in case if you see it on the web, so you're familiar with it. This is the end of our video for this lesson. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.